let's take a step into the marketplace. Eromosele Aziba, one of the investment analysts at AfroInvest, is live here in the studios with us to kick off the trading week on the equity side of the street. Good morning. It's good to have you.
Good morning, boss.
Thank you. You folks have your office on the other side of the city, what you call the downtown guys, where the money is made and lost sometimes. The rest of us are uptown here. So, what's the state of the 3rd Mainland Bridge? You cross that anytime you come in to this side of the city.
Well, on the journey down here, it didn't seem like there were any blockages anywhere, so the road was still as business as usual. Everywhere was still open.
None of the contractors are not yet on site on the bridge?
None of that
not yet. Okay, well, what's the thinking of you folks when the bridge will be closed for a period of time, and then that's a major artery for Lagos?
Well, we've already seen some conflicting dates in terms of when the bridge would actually be closed. But I think the positive thing is there has been that warning that has come out well ahead of time, so that people are properly apprised of the situation, and there are alternative routes that are going to be open, or alternative routes that people will be able to take. Yes, would most likely see congestions on these routes, but the fact that awareness is already there, we expect that Lagos State government would also deploy the sufficient number of traffic officials to also ease the flow of movement.
If you work and live in Lagos, I'm sure we all know, and drive, we know the alternative routes already.
Most likely.
That's not news. There are no new alternative routes. It's the same old alternative roads. So if you're not taking the 3rd Mainland Bridge, you go through the next one. Yeah. So you go through the Ikorodu Road, as it's popularly known, isn't it?
Yeah, Ikorodu, Maryland,
yes. Maryland. And on the Ikorodu Road, the haulage vehicles looks like a permanent home there already. Oh, now that's not going to be it's not a joke.
I mean, it's still a key issue that needs to be addressed on that road, especially with the increased traffic that we're expecting to see there once the bridge work starts.
Yes, yes, because you got to divert people there, or you go through the Oshodi Mushin axis if you're coming from uptown. And if you come here, so the alternatives are pretty tight. The third will be the Oshodi Isolo. So those are the 3 major strategic roads. If you're coming from this side all the way down to Lagos Island, Victoria Island, and those roads are already congested. We hope there will be, like you said, enough traffic officers to make sure that the Danfos, the Molwares, and contending with the BRT buses, the Okadas, the Marwas, a bit of a vehicular nightmare that Lagos is. I'm looking for things getting a little bit more difficult for myself and my guests here when the 3rd Mainland Bridge is closed. But we got something new coming for you downtown. We're going to have time later to talk about easing things off in terms of what we do in the city as Nigeria's news and business news leader. We're keeping that secret from you for now, just to have a way of ease of doing business.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's talk about equities. We're still seriously bearish. Everyone says this market is cheap. My question is, who is buying?
Yes, so since the start of the year, since late last year, what we've noticed, it's mostly been the domestic investors that have dominated activities in the market. As at the start of the year, we saw the rally that we had in markets, where the market reached as high as 17%, but that has steadily declined. We've seen successive bouts of profit-taking in the market. So what we've noticed over the past 2 months now is you have some sort of bearish trend for 3 or 4 days. Then you have about 2 days of gains. There you see investors take profit.
The market still just show what it wants to
do. Again, now
are investors confused, or they're looking for a new thing to move things either seriously up or down if you're looking at the political scenario?
So looking at the way the market is now, there's a lot of uncertainty that's currently playing on minds of investors, and it's and it's largely tied to developments in the polity. Looking at some sort of policy uncertainty that is usually characteristic of a year leading up to general elections, and that's really what we are seeing play out in the market now, especially for short-term investors who are just trying to come into the market, make their gains, exit the market, and then come back into the market. So it's at the moment it's all about timing the market appropriately to make those gains. Because despite the fact that we've seen a largely bearish performance, there are still some stocks in there that the investors have been able to make profit on.
1.14 trillion naira was what the market melted, the size of the meltdown in the month of May alone. That was huge.
Yes, it was.
We've lost that since the year started.
It was in a month. No,
that's about since the year started. Yes, the year started. I think we moved from about 80 billion to about north of half a trillion naira in the month of May. But cumulatively, that is huge if you're considering where we are today in terms of the index heading south and the equity capitalization.
Yes, that was quite huge. And in terms of looking at the monthly declines in market cap that we've seen, that's one of the largest that we've seen, if not the largest since the start of the year. And again, this generally feeds into the sort of bearish sentiment that we're currently seeing in the market. So, for instance, even last week, in terms of looking at what investor sentiment is, which is usually gauged by market breadth, which looks at the number of stocks they have advancing against the number of stocks they have declining. Market breadth as at last week was about 0.3 times, which means we had a significant number of decliners in the markets relative to gainers. I think only about 17 stocks gained last week, and we had over 40 stocks decline in the week. So that generally bearish sentiment is still there in the market. But like I mentioned earlier, despite the losses that the negative performance that we're seeing, there are still stocks there that investors are making gains on. So, for instance, the 17 stocks that I mentioned that gained last week. So it's all been about timing the market appropriately, knowing when to come in, when to exit.
So we just explained it very simple to people. There is no general fear that the market will go sharply any further. I'm not too sure that is on the table right now.
No, not net. Because even looking at fundamentals of the companies in terms of their performance, we're expecting it to numbers to start to come in from
for Q2.
For Q2 H1 numbers. Sorry. So from the end of this month, we should start seeing numbers come in. Our expectation is that will most likely be positive for the banking space, for instance, especially the tier 1 players. But looking at what we had in the first quarter of the year, where we didn't necessarily see any significant reaction to the results that came out, we could also see a similar situation here in the market, even after the release of the results, despite the fact that we're expecting them to be somewhat positive. Political uncertainty still remains the key factor that investors are looking at.
Who's worried about the political environment, the landscape? Is it more of the local investors, you and I, or foreign portfolio investors?
More specifically, is mostly the foreign players in the market, and we know that historically our market's performance, the years that we've seen that sort of bullish run in the market has largely been characterized by a lot of foreign participation in the market. But I mean, if you look at the reason why we still have a slightly positive outlook on the market for the second half of the year, in terms of comparing our markets with other African markets, for instance, you still have our own stocks trading, market trading at some sort of significant discount to peers.
Yeah, that's my point. So the market is cheap. We're cheaper than Morocco, Egypt, and the Kenya market. But the question is, who is buying and why? Where are the opportunities? If we go by what Warren Buffett, the mantra, be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful.
Yes, so it's all about going back to timing the market. So yes, we've seen some declines in some stocks. Now with these declines, what we've noticed is that some of the fundamentally sound stocks in the market. So, for instance, some of the tier one banks, some of the players in consumer goods space, construction, industrial goods as well, have fallen to attractive entry prices for investors to take advantage of. So, for instance, we saw GT Bank, which has gone as high as 57 naira this year, fall below 40 naira in the week. And this creates an opportunity for an investor to come into the market in a situation where we have a period of gains in the market. This is definitely one stock that would most likely trend higher. It has demonstrated its defensive nature over the past years. So just cherry picking these stocks in the market.
They will always outperform the market one way or the other.
Yes, would definitely be good for investors' portfolios. And I mean, this is what we are here for as investment advisors to our clients.
So you pick up phone calls almost on a daily basis with the rest of your team. Here, local investors say, what's going on at the stock market? What are the key issues that local retail investors, the folks with 500, 100,000, half a million naira, saying about the market at this point?
Well, the outlook still remains largely positive, but we know that...
what are they saying? Are they scared? They say, move my portfolio? Are they say, change the stocks, whatever?
So for a lot of investors, the question is, why is the market going down? Historically, what we've had with domestic investors is they sort of embark on this type of bandwagon movement. So when you see what the foreign portfolio investors are buying and you see the market rising, we have a lot of domestic investors just follow that trend. But since we have seen that the domestic players in the market seem to dominate activities now in the market, there's some sort of confusion as to what to buy, who to follow, and this is part of why we take a look at the market on a weekly basis, see what opportunities are there for investors to take advantage of. Because regardless of negative performance that we're seeing, like I mentioned, we still have good fundamentally sound stocks in the market that investors should be taking position in.
So folks are not really exiting the market with a general bandwagon fear factor?
No, not necessarily.
At this point?
Not necessarily.
Why are they scared about the future?
Well, for a lot of these domestic investors who have a more short-term view on the market, it's more about just coming into the market now, making whatever gains they can make, exit in, say, a week, and then watch the market for a bit again before coming back into the market. But again, we would continue to harp on the importance of diversifying your portfolio. So even when you're investing in equities, diversify across sectors, or if you're looking at the broad market, diversify between equities and fixed income as well, so that you can ensure that your portfolio's performance is still positive at the end of the year.
As FPIs continue to outflow a little bit, what's the outlook from you and the rest of your team about when they will likely start stepping back into this market?
Well, until the conclusion of the elections in January, in February 2019, we still expect this outflows to continue. If you also consider the fact that the U.S. Fed has still guided towards about 2 more rate hikes in the year, this could still have an impact on foreign
how these hedge
flows.
fund guys behave.
But if you look at, for instance, the Eurobonds market, so trading activities in sub-Saharan Africa, sovereign Eurobonds, following the last rate hike, we saw a lot of foreign investors sell off on frontier market instruments, and this was sustained for about a month. But over the past 2 weeks, we've noticed that there has been some sort of gain there in the market. We've seen some investors come back into the market.
But they ain't going nowhere. They ain't going nowhere. For emerging and frontier markets, they ain't going nowhere.
I mean,
we still have attraction.
You still have attractive yields on these instruments.
Yes, we do. Have a great week. Let's hang in there for today. We have a lot to talk more next week. The MPC. Eremo Ziba from Afrinvest. Yes, we hosted the 25th annual meetings of Afrexim Bank. We'll take a listen to some of the closing words as we draw the curtain on that very important event.